Hi, I'm Susan, and I thought I would tell you about how I became so interested in looking at nature's comeback after natural disasters. So I live in California and I love the outdoors. I love to camp, I love to backpack, I love to hike, and I always thought it would be fun to have a little spot of my own somewhere in the forest. But, in California, as we know, there's been so many forest fires. And so that's kind of a dangerous proposition to have a spot in the forest because it has such a high risk for getting damaged by fires. But then I started thinking about that from a backwards perspective. But wait a minute, there's already been so much damage done to our forests by forest fires. And what's happening to all that damaged land? Who's looking after it? Is anybody doing it? Who owns it? Is it owned by private landowners? Is it owned by U.S. Forest Service? And what can be done to help the forest come back? Is there anything that humans can do? Or does forest just come back using its own strategies? So I started to look into this. Okay, so of course, the first thing that I did was Google how to buy a burnt forest. And maybe not unsurprisingly, that did not yield any hits. So I did some more Googling and I finally landed on this really helpful forester who works for CAL FIRE. And he was very nice and he took my cold call and I just said, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a burnt forest. What do I need to think about?" And he was really nice and very helpful. And first he asked me, "Well, what do you want to do with this forest?" And I said, "Well, I just want to help it recover back to being a healthy forest again." And he said, "Okay, couple things to think about. First of all, doing reforestation work after a severe fire is most successful when it's done in the first like 1 to 3 years after the fire. So, okay, so look for some land that had been damaged within 1 to 3 years after the fire. Second of all, he said, well, if you're trying to return it back to being a healthy forest and you're interested in trying to help prevent like urban sprawl, try to find something that's on the edge of this interface between urban development and wilderness." And so that was useful. And the third and important thing that he said was to find a forester. So, armed with that information, I went back to my computer and I put up a map from CAL FIRE that they have on their website, which shows all of the areas that have been burned in the last 5 years across California. And then I put up Zillow so I could see if there was any overlap between places that were for sale that had been burned. Oof. I mean, I'd driven by places that have been affected by a fire, but I'd never actually walked through it and seen up close the extent of the damage. And I have to admit that I was pretty overwhelmed and like, wait, this sounded like a good idea when I was sitting in my house. But now that I'm out here, is this really something that I can do? But I decided to just keep putting one foot in the front of the other to try to see what I could do to move forward with my plan. So I called a forester from the list that the CAL FIRE person had given me and asked him to come out and check out one of the sites that I had visited to get his opinion so I could understand what would you do to help bring a forest that's been so badly damaged back to life. So he said that the first thing you're going to want to do is what's called salvage logging. If there's trees that have been damaged by the fire, such to the point that they're not going to survive, but they still contain wood that's good enough to be milled, then those can be taken off the property and turned into lumber for construction projects. So after the salvage logging, the next thing the forester said to do was to prepare the forest to plant new seedlings, which is of course exactly what we want to do, to see seedlings come back and have the forest be restored. But unfortunately, the first thing you have to do before you do that is remove the trees that are still standing that weren't eligible to be salvaged into lumber wood, but they're still dead, and over time they're going to fall. But of course, dead trees fall in the forest all the time, and that's just a part of the natural cycle of a forest. But after a severe fire, what happens is there's so much dead wood that it's overwhelming to the forest. And those falling trees can actually hurt the new seedlings that are coming up. So the next thing is to go in and remove the standing dead trees. You actually leave some because some is good for wildlife, but in order to remove them, you have to either take them and have the dead trees chipped and turned into wood chips, or you can pile them and burn them. And then one more step, the forester said, before you can plant the seedlings, is to try and suppress all this undergrowth, these bushes that are coming up that normally would have been suppressed when there was a forest growing above it because it wasn't getting any sunlight. But now there's no cover, and so these brush is growing up super quickly. And it grows really fast, faster than any little seedling that you can plant. And so you have to suppress this brush so that it doesn't outcompete the seedlings. And then the next step, you get to plant the seedlings that literally grow out of the ashes after the fire. So with that, I was hooked, and I decided to push away my fears and just jump right in. And I bought 40 acres of a forest that was burned in a fire about 3 years ago, and I'm working with the forester now, the same person who helped me check out the property in the first place. And we've already done salvage logging. We've done some logging of taking down the standing dead trees, and we're going to be starting on the planting project soon. And I'm already so inspired. I mean, look at this guy. It's a ponderosa pine, and we didn't plant this. This is nature coming back on its own. And you can see signs of this all over this forest, different plants using different strategies to come back, even though they've been severely damaged in the fire. So even though we see more natural disasters happening, we can feel hopeful that there are ways that both we and nature can recover. Go nature,
okay,
go.
Here we are for the inaugural planting. Oh, I'm supposed to, I can do it. Okay.
So Susan has 40 acres out here and 30 acres burned, and we want to do 300 trees an acre. At this rate, we will be here for 4 million years.
I think that's good. Okay, little cedar, grow. Grow, little cedar, grow. Here we go. Okay. Okay. Be strong, be brave, little tree. You can make it.
All right.